I'm Felina.
And I'm Summer.
And you are listening to Broken Broken.
Because we're both.
The podcast about living your best life by getting real.
Hey, broken people. This is Summer.
And this is Felina. And today we're going to be doing something just a little different. We don't have a guest, but in the spirit of our podcast and destigmatizing shame, we are trying out a new experiment. Summer has done a journal, an online or recorded journal. Maybe you can explain exactly what you did.
It's kind of, some people call it audio journaling. It's a thing that sometimes they'll recommend in therapy where you just
stream of consciousness,
right? You talk into the recorder, just a stream of consciousness, and then you play it back so that you can actually hear the thoughts going on in your head. So it's kind of helps you process through your in identifying your irrational thoughts versus when you're in a good headspace. So when I recorded this, I was extremely depressed.
And this was about 2 weeks ago.
Something like that, yeah, a couple weeks ago. And I haven't listened to this since then, so I'm probably going to be as surprised as everybody else as to whatever I said, because I don't remember.
And when Summer sent this to me initially, I started thinking, well, wouldn't it be interesting to reflect upon it after a little bit of time had passed, and also for us to just kind of go through and dissect it and give Summer a chance to reflect on what she said and how she feels about it now, and even in just how much things can change in just 2 weeks. So we're going to play this stream of consciousness that Summer, and it is a really private thing that she's being willing to share with us. But if there's anybody else who ever would want to do something like this and volunteer to do a stream of conscious recording when maybe they're going through a hard time or something and send it to us, we could have you on as a guest and dissect it and reflect upon it with you, and we'll see if this experiment works. So,
we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, so let's hear Summer's start of her journal.
The truth is, I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for the last few days. I mean, I've been struggling some, but the last few days have been the hardest. I don't really know why. There's no identifiable cause. I don't know. It's not an anniversary reaction, or anything like that. I just came home from work and everything was fine. I cooked dinner. I felt great. And then within a couple hours, I was laying down in my bed way before bedtime, and I just couldn't get up.
Okay, I'm pausing it just because I want to ask Summer a question. So that was a couple weeks ago, and now looking back, have you figured out any sort of trigger that caused you to fall into a bit of a depression?
No, actually. Like I said, it's not an anniversary reaction. I do have PTSD. It's not. And this is interesting because this is the first time I've had such a depressive episode where I didn't also have the anxiety. Because I have anxiety all the time, but my anxiety has been well managed lately. So I think that's why I was struggling to understand the tiredness. Like, I really couldn't get out of bed. Because normally when I feel that way, I've also had like an anxiety attack. And so I've always dismissed it as that rebound reaction you have when the adrenaline levels go down. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have any of that. And so it was the first time I was really recognizing that physical reaction to the depression, where, I mean, I can hear my voice. Like I said, I sound terrible.
You were just exhausted.
Yeah, like there was nothing. And it wasn't even
So, and so now, I mean.
So this was purely chemical.
Yeah. There was nothing. Was there like any change in your diet or any change in your stress level at work or anything like that?
Not really. Yeah. I mean, I've actually had less stress lately.
Do you think that has caused depression? I know sometimes when I don't have enough stimulant, I will get a little depressed.
I don't think so. Especially as quickly as this happened, because I felt great. Like I said, I came home and I didn't just cook dinner. I cooked for that day, dinner for the next day, and lunch. So like didn't have anything, and then I just couldn't move. It happened so fast. Um,
That's
and
crazy.
no, I haven't been able to find an identifiable cause. So I guess this one was just purely chemical.
Chemical.
Yeah.
Well, let's keep listening, see what else happened.
Felt so physically drained and unbelievably lonely and sad. And I texted a friend and I talked to him about it a little bit. I didn't know why I felt like that or what, because it didn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But I still thought it was okay. And then the next morning, I woke up and I just started weeping for no reason. And I am not a crier. I don't even cry when I'm hurt. I was raised in a family that you weren't allowed to cry, so it's not even in my usual range of emotional expression. But there I was laying in my bed, weeping loudly for absolutely no reason and unable to stop it. And then I managed to get it together and get ready for work, and I thought I was okay, and I went to work, and I don't even remember. I was barely functioning. I don't really remember. But I'm looking at my text messages where he checked on me and asked me how I was feeling. And I told him I think I need to go back, go find a doctor again and ask about medication. And he encouraged me to do whatever I needed to do. And my answer was, I don't know what I need to do, but I know I can't be sitting here crying at my desk. Because I was, like 3 or 4 times, I just started crying, just a few tears, but there was no reason.
So, did you seek out any help?
I have a therapy appointment in a few days.
Yeah.
And so we're working on that because the doctor that I went to before is too far away now that I've moved.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to locate one that I can go to with my insurance. That's been kind of a fun trip, but we're working on that.
Yeah. Have you had a crying spell since?
Not since that one day, but that scared me.
Yeah.
The only time I've ever had that, I remember one more time in my life that I had that happen. It was about 15 years ago, and it scared me then too because it's so unlike me and it feels so out of control. And I remember then I was married and I had 2 little boys. I think my second son was a baby and the older one was a toddler, and it scared me so bad. My husband worked construction, so he was on the road. And I called him and I said, I need you to come home because I don't know what's wrong with me, but I don't feel like it's safe for me to be alone here with the babies. I need, I didn't think I was going to hurt them, but I was afraid that I was going to be not functional enough to take care of them, and I didn't want them being neglected.
Right, yeah. How old were they at the time?
The oldest would have been a toddler, like just 2, and then the youngest would have been an infant.
Well, it makes more sense to me to have some depression as when you have young children. I know how isolating it made me feel to have, Sophia, like to be alone with her when she was inconsolable.
Right.
It's really isolating.
Mm-hmm. And then you have all those hormonal changes too. Mm-hmm. And so I always just assumed it was so much worse because, it's postpartum or something.
Right, yeah.
So then when I had the same exact reaction this time, like, well, where the hell is it coming from now? Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah. So, okay, well, I'm just keep playing.
I had no control over it. And that's not normal. It's not healthy. Um, and I know that. And I mean, I have PTSD and I've dealt with anxiety stuff for years, but in my family, it's always been something you're supposed to hide. And I'm not willing to hide it anymore. Um, a few days after the beginning of this year, we had another family member who was lost to suicide. And I and I watched the family react the same way they always react. And I thought back to Christmas when my dad made a comment. He asked me if I knew what was wrong with me that makes me choose the terrible men that I choose. And I told him, kind of snarky, that it's because I was raised in this dysfunctional family. But it's okay. That's why I'm going to therapy, so I can fix that. And he got real judgmental about me going to therapy. And I remembered the first time that I recall one of our family members attempting suicide. I was young, and when Johnny made her first attempt, we weren't. Well, I don't even know that we were actually told about it. I think it was sort of just revealed in the context of prayer request at church. And then they had no choice but to talk to us a little bit. And basically, we were told not to talk about it, that it makes other people get the idea to do that. And there was a lot of religious shaming about how that can't be forgiven and you'll go to hell. And I remember a younger cousin who was very young, but he already struggled with suicidal ideations and he couldn't talk about them. But the kids, around the same age, every now and then you might talk about them to each other, but we knew better than to ever talk about it to the older people, the ones that should have been teaching us and protecting us. There was absolutely no conversation about mental health or getting help to heal from trauma or any of that. We were told that your mind's just weak, or you pray about it, and if you do what God says to do, He'll fix it. It's kind of a ridiculous and even cruel argument to keep making as you lose more and more people. But they continue, and so it was a little, I don't know if I guess angry, but I didn't even have the emotional energy to put into being angry because it seems like a lost cause, really, at least as far as my family is concerned. But for the broader population, maybe not. I want people to use whatever time and energy they have to check on people that they love and to take care of their own mental health and to encourage people to take care of theirs. Stop shaming people for trying to get the help they need.
Okay, so I've heard you talk about a couple of things here with your dad essentially dismissing and shaming you for seeking help, for first blaming you.
Oh yeah.
First, number one, blaming you for not having a man in your life, right? Essentially,
and for always picking terrible
for
men.
picking the terrible men. Yeah, why? That's all your fault, Summer. Why do you pick such terrible men?
The irony being, he's only ever met 2 men that I've ever been with.
So where does his knowledge come from regarding any other man?
He doesn't know anything about any of them.
He just makes assumptions.
Yeah.
Okay. And
he
then,
says those 2 are enough. He can.
Oh, okay.
He's like, he says you picked the 2 worst baby daddies in the world. You can't be trusted to pick any more men.
Okay. And does he realize that he's part of the reason that perhaps you don't choose the best men?
No.
Yeah.
He's stubbornly refusing to see how any of that plays in.
So he's never done any self-reflection on how his, raising you has maybe
No.
created any issues, or so he's not going to take any responsibility.
No, not on this front. There have been times when there has been some self-reflection from him. That does make me hopeful. There has been some growth. Mm-hmm. Like we've had conversations about, my mother being a child bride and how that was an unhealthy thing, and he's come to realizations on that, how that was, and how their relationship did impact us in some ways. But yeah, he can't bring himself to go any further as far as accepting responsibility for any of the traumas or the lack of healthy coping skills that we grew up with, or any of that. He just can't get there.
Yeah, I mean, is it a generational thing with these men, do you think? Because or is it systemic and still continues to this day, in that, like, we've got these dads of little girls who and I guess I'm speaking from my own experience, recent experiences and learning experiences too, but I mean, we've got like these dads of little girls, and they grow up into these women. Mm-hmm. And the way that the dads treated their little girls and the examples that they set were such that they essentially set their daughters up to fail for relationships if they're, supposed to be the example of what a grown woman, when she become a woman, you idolize your father growing up and seek men out who treat you the same way. So like if it just the irony of your dad saying to you, like, well, what's wrong with you?
Right. And I think part of it is a systemic
is this just part of the patriarch?
I think so, because when you conceive of women as property, you may want better for your daughter as your property than you're treating the women in your life. And so there's a disconnect between what I do in my relationships, because I'm telling her to want something better, but it's like there's this tolerance that you develop. Like I have a high tolerance for fucked up shit. I really do.
Ditto.
Because when you're used to a certain amount of dysfunction,
mm-hmm.
things have to get to that point before
mm-hmm.
before your radar starts going off and saying, hey, what is happening?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just like, oh, sure, that's messed up, but it's tolerable.
Yeah. And I mean, like I think it's straight up lying, but the men, like, my experience has been almost sociopathic, like, compartmentalization of the past. Like my dad now, like, it's just like these things just never happened.
Right.
And they're like, and he really
denial.
He really believes that. Like, right. He really has told himself this lie for so long, or blocked it out so hard. Mm-hmm. It's almost like self-preservation that these things that they did and said just didn't happen.
Right.
And they only remember the good stuff. What the fuck is that?
The idealization, that nostalgia. Now, only those good things happen. And in my family, my dad, he takes it very personally if we say, certain things were negative, because he was raised in a very abusive environment. And so he consciously made a decision, I'm going to be different with my children. But like I said, that tolerance level the level of abuse we received was much lower than what he received.
And so therefore it wasn't
Right. So it didn't qualify in his definition of abuse. And so therefore I'm being an ungrateful child by choosing to do
It's
other
almost,
things with my children,
yeah.
or even stating that I need to heal or deconstruct some of my own mindsets
Mm-hmm.
as a result of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they internalize that very much as a direct insult to them and their parenting.
But isn't that like, I mean, I'm a parent, you're a parent, you know, like, I don't know, if my daughter came to me and was like, Mom, like, you're doing this and this hurt me, they would, my initial reaction wouldn't be to just be like, well, you're wrong and here's why, and this is your fault. Like, I would never respond that way. Like, it's very specific with men, it seems like, that this refusal, and that's maybe not entirely true. I know plenty of women who don't want to take responsibility for their actions.
Too, so I don't know that it's a male thing. I think it's,
and I guess that goes back
it's
to
just more common in men because the way we're conditioned differently.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that goes back to my initial question. Like, is this a generational thing? Do you think that dads? Because, like, I know my daughter's dad is not like that. You know, he takes responsibility, and probably in part because I've held his ass accountable.
Right.
You know, but you know, and I think that's another reason why, as a strong woman, like, I advertise that I am a strong ass woman.
Right.
Because I don't want a man who can't handle that.
Same. And I think that's part of what he's talking about is he perceives the fact that I have men, like, my relationships with men are different than what he thinks they should be. He thinks there should be a monogamous relationship with the man there, you know, as a permanent fixture. And I don't do that. I'm not in a place in my life I can do that because of the situation with my children. You know, I have children with trauma background that cannot have a man living in the house at this point. So it's just not going to happen. So there's a judgmental thing about what should happen. But I think, I think it feels like a generational thing more so. Because generations are changing. But I see it in every generation. It seems to be just a common fixture with people who don't have healthy coping skills. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, as we are learning more about child development and about healthy skills, hopefully we are shifting across generations. But I mean, my son, my teenage son, just the other day told me about something that I had no idea about. A family member physically abused him while he was a toddler that I had no idea. And I feel very guilty because I feel like this person would have had access to him. And how did I not know? And he says, and he told me, I tried to tell you, but he was only 3. Mm-hmm. And so his ability to verbally express what was happening wasn't there. And so I wasn't understanding what he was trying to tell me. And so I understand how painful it is to hear these things. And I think people who don't have healthy coping mechanisms or healthy coping skills just don't know how to process through that. So they become defensive and just shut it down every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It just really bothers me. Going back to the segment that we just listened from your journal, we also listened to your dad. What was the portion on religion? I mean...
a lot of religious shaming about, particularly in evangelical. I mean, it's pretty common across Protestant teachings, but the more towards the evangelical wing you get, the more common it is, and the more it's stressed that mental illness means there's something wrong with you spiritually. Some of the more fringe denominations will even go into saying that there's 2 phrases they use, demon possessed and demon oppressed. But basically it's a spiritual matter, and it just means you're not right with God, and that you're supposed to pray it away, and if you can't, then you're doing something wrong. So there's a lot of blaming, and so there's a lot of untreated mental health issues.
And this, in my mind, is where roots grow for some of the most sadistic people in our culture. Mm-hmm. And it's really religion and this dogma, this specific type of, I think, damaging.
Mm-hmm. It's harmful. It's absolutely harmful.
Especially when you're doing this to children, mm-hmm. you know, and I've not been directly exposed to that. Like, whenever I was a kid, I chose to go to church, but it was never really forced upon me. It was certainly given to me as an option, and I chose to do it. But I could also walk away without any consequences as well. And I've always been kind of on the outskirts of watching people be more religious than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept like, I would always try to make myself like, well, I should be doing this. I should be feeling what they feel. I should be in this. But the more I tried, the more I got turned off by all of it. And now over the years, I mean, even my ex-boyfriend, he had been really like it really did something to his brain.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a very intelligent man, and it really did something to his brain, the wiring of it, to have had that like really religious evangelical dogma taught to him as fact, and for him to deconstruct that as not fact was really, really hard for him. And he still struggles with that, and I know that's part of his sociopathic behavior, you know, and he also is bipolar as fuck.
And the when you mentioned doing this to children, when you tie, especially in the more extreme apostolic, the more extreme churches where everything's literal, everything's taken very literal.
Mm-hmm.
The teaching is very much, there's something wrong with you because you're human, the whole original sin thing, right? You are always going to be inadequate. And then the idea that blaming that happens, like everything that is wrong with you is your fault because you're not meeting God's whatever, it also creates this lack of empathy for other people because you're being taught, well, if this is going wrong for them or anything like that, it means they're inferior. They're an inferior person because they're not doing what God is saying. And so it creates a lack of empathy, and especially when you couple it with the ones who have the school of thought of the only way to teach children is through physical punishment. So when you couple those two things in formative years, you have the recipe for creating sociopaths because you're not having proper bonding, and a lot of times you're escalating into abuse.
Yeah.
Sometimes at the instruction of your pastor.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if he was ever abused. I'm just thinking about him as an example because he's the only, you know, sociopath that I've had a lot of well, him and my father, I'm realizing, have a lot of similar traits in that nothing is ever their fault. And I think I am just like totally fucking fed up with things not being men's fault or anybody who
people
can't take
accept responsibility.
Yeah.
I was actually very careful when I got with my ex-husband. I was deliberately trying to find somebody that wasn't like my dad. And we see that didn't work out either. So sometimes the plan, you know, because I wanted somebody who was caring and who was not, you know, who did empathize and what, you know, but even that doesn't always work out. So
yeah, you know, and it's so funny because like I didn't even realize, like, my ex-husband was similar to my father in that he used guilt to control me emotionally.
Right.
That was how he got his way, because I feel this obligation to make other people happy.
Right.
And I really didn't think I was doing that in my relationship with Ryan, but I was. He was the same way, and he was worse because he was a liar.
Right.
And my dad was such a liar. I mean, there's so many lies and secrets that he kept from me, and I think being raised for that around someone who was that way, it was normal.
Right. It's normalized, so you don't really recognize that, hey, this is as big a deal as it is.
Yeah, but he can, I mean, I fully opened up and was completely vulnerable with him and honest with him about everything, and he never was the same in return. So it's just real creepy to find out somebody's not who you thought they were for years.
Right.
And then to find out your own father maybe isn't who you thought he was either. Like, it's just a mind fuck.
It is, because you're like, how did I not see this?
Yeah.
Did they change? But
you know,
how does this happen? You know?
And I was talking about this this past weekend. I had a couple of family members pass away, and you know, death tends to bring, you know, healing and reflection. So as I was reflecting with some family members this weekend, I was talking about how you know, when you've got somebody that you love and they present a version of the truth that you want to believe, it's easy to buy into it because you want to believe
Because
it.
you want to. I say that all the time. People
Yeah.
don't want the truth. They want you to convince them whatever they want to believe is true.
Yeah.
And so we do have it's so easy to be in denial about things or to not see things because
we want to be happy and
right, and feel safe and be yeah. That's a natural instinct.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it backfires on
Yes.
us.
All right, well, let's hear a little bit more.
I mean, this life is hard enough. Why the fuck are we making it harder for each other? And we've got to shatter the fucking stigma around mental health because it's literally killing us. So I decided that I'm not going to hide it anymore. I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to shove it in people's faces, and I'm going to tell people when I need help. And I'm not willing to pretend I'm okay to make other people more comfortable anymore, because I've watched too many people do that, and I've watched too many lives end too soon because of it. I've watched people destroy their health trying to do that and live that way. I have taken years off my life living that way, and I'm not going to do it anymore.
Good.
And I want to say something about that. There's this idea, and we see it a lot, like things posted on. We see it a lot posted as a meme on social media. You know, I'm a safe person. If you're feeling this way, reach out. And it's backwards, because when people are in this depressive state or they're feeling that way, very often they can't reach out. I managed to this time, probably the first time ever. Most people aren't in a place that they can reach out like that.
Yeah.
We have to check on the people we care about.
Yeah.
When we see something's wrong, when we can tell, we've got to reach out.
Yeah.
So do that. Check on your people.
Yeah.
Take care of them.
Yeah. You know, I was recently in a situation with some friends that have basically decided that, you know, my emotional needs were too much to put on them. And, you know, I still can't wrap my mind around it exactly what it is that I was needing too much of. I'm pretty honest and open, and yeah, I just don't think that if somebody calls you friend, if really somebody is your friend, you should be able to be yourself and be honest about all the craziness that goes on in your life. And just because you're sharing it with people who supposedly love you does not mean that you're putting it on them. Like,
right.
I was really baffled by that feedback, especially because I'm the kind of person that's always there for anybody who's going through something extremely traumatic. Like, I would, you know, so I think they were seeing me, you know, work through some trauma from my last relationship, and that apparently became too much for them to deal with. So I just find it bizarre to have people abandon you,
right,
when they're like, oh well,
when you're most vulnerable.
Yeah, they're like, oh well, you're clearly hurting right now, and your emotional needs are too much, so I'm gonna go away. That's me.
Kick you while you're down.
And that's me setting a boundary with you, and you need to respect my boundaries and stay away while you're dealing with your emotional shit.
That's some cruel gaslighting shit right there.
Right?
I think it happens more than we realize. I know I had a conversation with a friend where we were supposed to go out, and something had happened and delayed it anyway, and then was like, okay, so do you want to do this tonight or not? And finally he's like, maybe let's reschedule, because I'm depressed right now and I don't think I'm going to be any fun to be around. And I guess my reaction to that was pretty surprising, because I'm more concerned about that. If you're telling me you're depressed, like, no, we don't have to hang out, but I want to know if you're okay.
Yeah.
And I guess that's not the typical response that he gets, because he's like, what, you know, and he's like, but I don't know why I feel, you know. And I told him, if you want to talk about it, I'm not going to push you, you know, but if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. And he was like, yeah, but I don't know why I feel this way. Let me tell you something. As somebody who usually knows why I feel the way I feel, it doesn't always help like we feel the way we feel, and if you're depressed, stop telling yourself I need to just not feel this way, because you feel how you feel.
Yeah,
and you need to address
you're gonna
that.
slow the process of healing if you don't acknowledge and you know what I've also encountered is there are people who are just not comfortable with emotion.
That's true.
And
it's taken me years to get there, because we were taught not to express emotion, and so to learn how to deal with emotion in myself, let alone other people, took years.
So before you became more comfortable with it, did you shy away from people who were openly emotional?
I didn't really shy away from people and cut them off, but I had no idea how to help them. I was absolutely useless in that sort of situation. I've always went ahead and let people talk to me and tell me, but I didn't know any.
You just listened.
Right. I didn't know how to do anything else, because I literally had no idea how to.
Yeah.
Like, especially somebody crying, because there was such a taboo thing in my house. I don't know how to deal with people crying. I would be like, there from across the room.
God, I don't know if we would have been able to be friends back then, because I used to be such a crier.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I still will every now and then, but I'm not a crier like I used to be, for sure.
I had no idea how to deal with it, and it's funny now, because I'm like, wow, that was, I mean, I still have an initial reaction sometimes. It's like, okay, what do I do for this person? What do they need? Because it's not an automatic thing, like when you're used to that range of expression.
And just on the topic of helping people, helping others, reaching out to your friends. Yeah, okay, like if you saying, and I've been one to say, hey, like if you're feeling like during the holidays, I was like, if you're feeling lonely, call me. I'm here. Like, and I know that that's not always enough. But I did check on the people that I loved and texted people and, just checked in.
Right.
Said, hey, I'm thinking of you. Yeah. Even if it's somebody I haven't talked to in a long time. Like, I'll just sometimes just feel the need to, like, go through my list of people, my contacts, and just, like, say hi. Hey.
I do that.
Yeah.
Frequently.
Yeah. But not everybody's like that.
No, but I feel like we need to start being more like that.
I do too. Like we live in this society where mental health is stigmatized. Access to health care is limited, and we want to tell people, oh well, I can't handle your emotions, so go call a therapist, go get therapy. Well, it's not always that easy,
right?
For one, but two, like we're a tribe. We're a tribe of people. We should be taking care of one another. We're in this,
right. We're a social species. We require beings. That sort of social connection.
Yeah, and when you are in a circle of friends, a group, a clique, a community, whatever it is that you are feel a part of, to be shunned by that group for whatever it is that you're feeling, it is the opposite of destigmatizing shame. It is making you feel. It's punishing you.
Well, it is.
It's punishing you for your human condition of, whatever emotional state that, or maybe it is a mental illness. Maybe it's temporary. Maybe it's, a period of growth, whatever it is, but to turn your backs on somebody that's in your community, within your circle, because they're suffering.
Right. It's not a healthy dynamic.
That's not how you treat
people.
That's just not how you treat people, in my mind. I don't know. Anyway, we can continue on. Just I'm going off on a side tangent.
I don't know if there's anything else in here worth listening to. I think we probably talked about most of it.
And my children need a better example than that.
Oh God. I do remember this. That hurt a lot.
Because I recently found out just how much one of my children has been struggling with all of this. And seems to have a lot of the same issues I do, minus quite a severe trauma, thankfully. But he's been hiding it, not just because of the messaging, from the extended family that you're supposed to hide it and you don't cry and all that other bullshit, but because he's watched me not talk about it, so he doesn't know how. And also because he's watched me and recognized that even when I'm making it can tell when I'm struggling. And he was afraid that he was going to put a bigger burden on me. And no child should ever worry about that. Because he's not a burden. I'm here to take care of him. But he's smart enough that he notices when I am having trouble getting out of bed. Because there are times, I know a lot of people, because I'm a creative person. I create a lot of things. I make things happen. I figure things out. And that's what most people outside my house know me for. But the reality is there are some times when I'm barely functioning. And the only reason I get up is because I have this deep sense of obligation to help other people and to do things for other people. And I have responsibilities to take care of. And if I didn't have those things, I wouldn't get up. I probably wouldn't eat. I would just lay there.
Yeah, I've totally been where, being single moms, we're both single moms. We've got kids who rely on us, and it's kind of a double-edged sword because we can't lick our wounds in the moments that we maybe need to.
Right.
We don't have the luxury of dealing with things as they arise. We have to learn this skill of compartmentalizing and
pushing through.
Yeah, pushing through. And so it's interesting to me because, like, I think I probably would. There's been times when I really needed to have more time alone to deal with my own feelings emotionally, and I couldn't because I had Sophia. But I'm glad that she was there because I don't know if she hadn't been, if I hadn't had that purpose, that I would have ever pulled myself up.
Right.
Sometimes.
And I think that's part of that whole social instinct that we have, is those connections are what keep us going. And that's why that's one of those protective factors when you start looking at like suicide prevention and stuff. They talk about protective factors, and one of those things is having as many healthy connections as possible, because that's what helps us, is having those connections. And if I didn't have that, I probably would lay there and die, honestly. Like, I wouldn't have gotten out of bed or eaten anything or done anything to take care of myself.
When it's only you that you have to take care of, it's much easier to let it go.
Right.
But when you've got these other little helpless beings that need you,
then you can find that
that
motivation way down there somewhere and manage to do it. And so that's why it is important to have as many connections. If you don't have kids, still, friends, family, whatever social groups that you can find to to help give you those connections. It makes a huge difference. And then we need to be treating these, our connections well and checking on them when they need things. Not shunning them for being too emotional.
Oh my God, right? Please. So, I mean, this was a couple weeks ago, and I know you said you're going to go to a therapist in a few days.
Yeah, and I've been seeing her. It's the same therapist I've been seeing. So she's, good. She's real up to date on my. We'll just have to talk about the recent developments.
Well, how do you feel like things have changed, or you feel any differently than you did a couple weeks ago when you recorded that?
Oh, I am much better now. The depression it took several days to get better, fully better. I mean, I was feeling better within a couple of days from that recording, and then within a week I was back to normal. So so I'm fine now. And that's the thing a lot of people don't understand, is that it's not necessarily a constant, and everybody's is different. And I just feel like we need a lot more education and understanding about mental health in the first place. Because I feel like if we did have that overall, a lot of the way we raise kids would be different. A lot of the way that we treat each other would be different. And we would definitely be
a healthier
a healthier society
happier
entirely.
society. For me, like I guess I've never really focused so much on like I'm not a therapist and I can't diagnose my friend, with bipolar this or narcissist that or whatever, but like I believe in being accepting and loving and
Right.
allowing people to grow and change and maybe somebody does you wrong, but maybe there was another perspective you didn't quite understand, or and they were going through something, and they're going to learn and grow from it. And I just am not in the habit of writing people off. I'm in the habit of loving people and allowing them to grow and change. And I do wish that there was more of that. Like I feel like I see a lot of people just deciding that's who you are, and then you're done with that person because that's who they are. And maybe I'm too much of an optimist, but I
Well, and
just
I think sometimes even if that's who they are, does
can't.
that necessarily mean we have to write them off entirely?
Yeah.
I mean, there are ways that we can have healthy boundaries in our life so that whatever it is they have going on doesn't harm us.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't necessarily have to shun people.
Yeah.
Just because we don't like how whatever they're dealing with, or I mean, we have different relationships with different people.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's wrong with finding a space for that person?
Yeah. If you really care
If
about
we
somebody,
can.
you do.
Yeah, if we can.
If you really love someone, you do. I think love is too short. There's just not enough of it right now.
That's true. And we all, I mean,
I think all
I don't
emotions
know.
really are rooted in love or fear,
That's
and
true.
the reactions to how you choose to treat people. Is it rooted? Ask yourself, like, is it rooted in fear or is this rooted in love? Like, why am I treating this person this way? Why have I decided they're this way? Is this coming from a place of fear inside me? Maybe it's a fear of abandonment, or fear of inadequacy, of your own issues. Or are you really loving this person, and being having perspective and having empathy and putting yourself in their position, and trying to be loving and understanding.
Right. There's a book called Nonviolent Communication that basically the entire premise of that is communicating with people, particularly people that you have high conflict with. And that's the whole idea, is learning to recognize what's causing the reaction in you and also what's causing the reaction in them. Because a lot of times anger is fear turned outward.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can recognize what their fear or whatever that trigger point is for them and address things there, then you can be much more successful at dealing with them and whatever you have to do. Yeah. And sometimes you can't be the person that somebody takes their problems to. Like my baby daddy, we've had some major issues, and there was a lot of suicide threats as a way to manipulate. Okay, so I stopped accepting when he would tell me those things. And then one day he came up with a legitimate threat. Like, I could tell there was something seriously wrong. I cannot be the person you bring this to. We don't have the relationship that I can help you with this.
Yeah.
And I could have left it there, but I didn't. I said, I want you to call he's got a best friend that's like a brother. I said, I want you to call him, and I want you to tell him. Because I can't help you. And even though my life would be easier if you weren't here to I still think, I can still take this step because you're still a person.
Yeah.
And and so even if you can't be the one to help them with whatever they're dealing with, you can still help them in a way, help them find some other path to help it. You don't have to just be like, oh, you're too much, I can't deal with you.
Yeah. I think ultimately all of this really boils down to children, and if we're ever going to change this, is we have to
do better for them.
We have to do better for our kids. It's the only way to change it, because it's we've got children who are repeating the same cycle of violence and abuse that they've experienced, and it perpetuates it, and it's going to continue to go on until we and there's really no healing. It's going to be much easier to heal a child from recent trauma if we give them proper treatment as a child
Oh, absolutely.
at the time it's occurring. so that they understand it's not their fault and they don't repeat those same patterns going forward. So, with that, I say that because I'm going to plug a nonprofit organization I used to work for in Norman called the Center for Children and Families.
Oh yes, I refer people there all the time.
Which they're just a fantastic organization, and like if we could flood all resources into, if they had unlimited resources to help all the children in the world, we would have a better generation of children. We would have a better generation of adults, in the years to come. We could heal this world by providing the treatment that this organization gives to the children that are fortunate enough to land there who've experienced trauma. It's just an amazing organization.
And they do a lot of there's a lot of focus on family teaching. It's a wraparound service, so they're teaching the parents how to deal with this too, which is something some places don't do. Like they might give you therapy for the child, but that's not going to help if you're not also like educating the parents on how this is going to manifest, how to deal with this. If they're the ones causing the trauma, it's not going to fix that problem until you address it there. And it would make such a difference if we could do this with every kid.
Well, I'll just say, if anybody wants to donate to that cause, ccfi.org, Center for Children and Families. They're just a great organization. Look into it.
Definitely. And one last note I want to make as we wrap up, the photo that we've used for this episode was actually taken the same day that the recording was made. It was probably 4 or 5 hours after, so I was still very deep in the middle of this episode, and you would not know it by looking at the photo, right? So I just want people to remember you can't always see it in someone's face that they're depressed, but often you can see it in their behaviors and the way things change. So check on the people you love, watch for those things, and be there to support and take care of each other, because at the end of the day, all we have is each other.
You can contact the podcast at brokebrokenpodcast@gmail.com. The Broken Podcast can be found on Twitter at Broke Broken Show, on Instagram and Facebook at Broke Broken Podcast.